How do we help people find genetics that won't break the bank?
To build a marketplace for these grass genetics, as Steve Campbell calls it, but essentially animals that can do well on pasture. It's a marketplace, an auction house, if you will, specifically for these animals. So it's live animals, seed stock, animals to finish, and even finished animals. But the mission, ultimately, I'll say one final thing, is helping this regenerative movement grow and removing something that I believe is a friction point for people attempting to get into it, or even people attempting to scale or just in it that don't have a massive brand, let's say, that they've built over decades. Pretty much everyone outside of those people can benefit from an easier way to move regenerative animals. And I believe by doing this, we can grow the regenerative movement and we can heal our nation.
And what kind of work goes into building something like that?
And it can be hard, candidly, to work on something for 5 months. I heard a sermon a couple weeks ago that you have to build the roots before you can harvest the fruit. And that changed my perspective in a way. And I started to appreciate more that, okay, no, I'm not picking fruit now. But what I am doing is building roots in a way I think that's helping every single person that enters this network is going to continue to benefit long-term from the roots of this network that are being built before the fruit can come. And we just had a piece of fruit come. We just helped someone get a bowl that's really going to help their herd. So boom, we already have a piece of fruit and the roots keep growing.
All that and more on this episode 519 of the Working Cows podcast, brought to you by Nebraska Grazing Lands Coalition.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Host of the Working Cows podcast. Very excited to be joined today by Cory Eft. Cory was connected with me by Steve Campbell and Will Winter, and really appreciate them facilitating this connection, because this is a great service that Cory has built, and what he's trying to do is really meaningful and helpful. So I look forward to letting you learn more about what he's doing. But what he is doing is building an online marketplace for grass-based genetics, not just cows, not just livestock, bovine, but other things too in the future. Even now, you can go on there and find turkeys and other things out there, dairy animals that will thrive in a grass-based system. So really neat opportunity. Look forward to letting you hear this conversation with Cory right now. Cory, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows podcast.
Thank you so much, Clay.
Well, when somebody calls and says, I talked to Will Winter and Steve Campbell, and they said that I should talk to you, it's kind of a no-brainer for me at that point that you're in. Those guys are kind of real well aligned with the Working Cows podcast and the way we try to approach things. And so you're doing some interesting work with a platform company. I don't know how we refer to it necessarily, called Astoria Livestock. Can you tell me a little bit about the platform and kind of what drew you to the work?
Absolutely. I think I'll first start by saying that Will and Steve's reputation is phenomenal, and for very good reason. So I'll weave a quick story as to what the platform is, what my motivations are, backstory, and how they weave into that. So I've always had a passion for computers and technology, and that led me for the past decade or so to work in corporate America on technology and software. And at the same time as that, on a separate thread, I also happened, by the grace of God, I would say, to stumble upon the amazing healing powers of, we'll say, natural, minimally processed food, specifically, I believe, animal products. And I was able to learn this through my own experience and even helping loved ones help heal themselves as well. I didn't know what the word regenerative was at that time, but the more I dug into this thread from a perspective of health, I eventually, of course, made it into regenerative agriculture as the foundation of where this food comes from. And so I read all the books and podcasts and articles and you name it. And I would point out that Marvelous Pigness of Pigs by Joel Salatin, I think was very foundational and I would say convicted me that I need to be doing something in order to help this movement with my own God-given abilities, with an aptitude for technology. So
Mm.
I didn't know what that meant at first because I didn't know that much about the industry really and what problems it had. So I really just set out to try to figure out how can I use technology to help this space? What can I do? I spoke with a lot of regenerative farmers. I ended up meeting Will Winter and Steve Campbell at the Weston Price Foundation conference, Wise Traditions, and I was exhibiting, interestingly enough, a platform very similar to Save.ag, a way less complicated, more, we'll say, prototypey type version. And I talked with them, though, about this idea that I was seeing people having a hard time finding good pasture-raised animals, animals that can go out on pasture and do well. I heard this from regenerative farms I was buying from, and they told me that this has been a pain point for decades since they've been around, and they would love to solve it as well. So I ended up partnering with them to build a marketplace for these grass genetics, as Steve Campbell calls it, but essentially animals that can do well on pasture. It's a marketplace, an auction house, if you will, specifically for these animals. So it's live animals, seed stock, animals to finish, and even finished animals. But the mission, ultimately, I'll say one final thing, is helping this regenerative movement grow and removing something that I believe is a friction point for people attempting to get into it, or even people attempting to scale, or just in it that don't have a massive brand, let's say, that they've built over decades. Pretty much everyone outside of those people can benefit from an easier way to move regenerative animals. And I believe by doing this, we can grow the regenerative movement and we can heal our nation. Because to me, a healthy society is made up of healthy people. And I believe that this regenerative movement is healing people. And by healing people, we can heal our nation. So that's why I'm in it at the end of the day. That's the North Star.
Yeah, very good. And just gonna back up and pick up some pieces there. What made you aware of the fact that the animals that can do well on grass are a different kind of animal? How'd you come to that conclusion?
It was initially talking to regenerative farmers, specifically the dairy that I used to buy raw milk from. They said there's no grass cows out there. And so there was two interesting things in that phrase to me. There are grass cows out there was the first one, but they couldn't find them. And the second was, what does that mean, grass cows? Why can't you just go buy a cow? So that was really what opened my mind to the fact that, yeah, there's two distinct sets of animals in America now.
Yeah, is that not a picture of how screwed up our food system is when you can have a cow that is not a grass cow? It's like, that's what they were made to do.
Right. People think they're better than God, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of been the story since the beginning, right? You shall be like God, knowing good and evil. So then you were just made aware of, hey, this is a pinch point for these regenerative farmers. We'd have more regenerative food available if they could get their hands on animals with the genetics that could do well on grass.
Absolutely. I mean, this dairy I was buying milk from, they had the people to help. They had the money. They had excess land. The only thing that they didn't, and I'll say they had a wait list, a massive wait list, almost 80 people, 80 families, we could say.
Mhm.
And they wanted to scale up, but they couldn't find the grass cows. So that was the opener, but I heard so many more stories like that. That was just the first that opened my eyes to this problem. And yeah, it felt like, wow, if we could help people get animals in order to make this healing food, it would be immense. And I believe that fully.
So would you describe this then as a like a B2B site more than it is a B2C, where you're connecting businesses that have grass genetics for cattle, sheep, pigs, chickens with businesses that are looking to market those genetics as a finished product, milk, pork, beef, chicken, eggs?
It's definitely B2B, 100% B2B. I would also throw homesteaders in there too, because whether
Sure.
you want to call them a business or not,
Yep.
doesn't matter. But
Right.
yes, it's people who could buy or sell a live animal, and if they're buying it, put it on their pasture or incorporate it into their regenerative program.
Yeah, certainly. So talk to me a little bit about the journey, of the actual platform itself and where you're at in that journey. I was able to watch a podcast that you were on earlier, but I didn't check and see what the date on that podcast was, so I don't know where you're at from where you were then. Just kind of talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, the platform has been in the works conceptually for about 2 years, and starting in January, I was able to dedicate myself to it full time, and roughly 2 months ago, we were able to launch publicly at AstoriaLivestock.com, and so everything that's necessary in order to apply to be a seller, which I can talk about more, run auctions, bid, move animals, everything is available and operating now.
Yeah, tell me about all that. First of all, kind of the process of getting on the platform with animals to sell.
I'll start by saying that I like to call it the bar for quality, but whatever you want to call it, what animals are allowed to be sold on the platform? Among the folks I've talked to, this seems to be absolutely the most important aspect of the marketplace, because if it's not clearly defined and well enforced, and I'd say generally agreed upon by the movement or the community, then you might as well just go to the auction barn, because there's no real difference at that point. So, what does it take to sell animals on Astoria? I would say the seller has to have a regenerative mindset, one where they're working with nature, one where they're pouring life back into the land, and I guess specifically one where the animals are living a generally natural life, free of consistent and highly intrusive synthetic inputs. So
Mhm.
grass genetics is a way to put it for cattle. Let's say cattle that can live, not just live, we'll say thrive on grass, and that's it. So the process essentially looks like, well, if Will or Steve already know you and vouch for you, you're in. And that's essentially where we started. But we've moved beyond that. And we have an application process, which can either be you can go on and fill out a questionnaire essentially about your farm, talking about your practices and what you do with your animals. Are you spraying synthetic pesticides? Are you rotating your animals? And so on and so on. And I worked through this process with Will and Steve, and we all seem to come to an agreement that we're not being ultimately strict. There is wiggle room. People can use an antibiotic or a vaccine, or they can do this or that that's not maybe the most ultimate ideal if their soil was, incredibly abundant. People are in a different place. There's varying reasons why maybe you do need to use that antibiotic, and maybe it makes sense for your business. They can either fill out that questionnaire or talk to me on the phone, and I'll run through those questions with them and essentially take their testimony as to what they believe about farming and how they operate their operation. But if they follow a natural regenerative mindset, then they'll be approved, and they can then run auctions. I like to say eBay style. It can be at their discretion. They can put up a listing for bidding. People can bid like an auction, or they can do buy it now and run it as long as they want. And so then people can go in on the buy side and filter by whatever they're looking for. They can even save that, kind of like Zillow. Let's say if you're looking for a house, you have a very particular thing that you're looking for. You can save that search and then get notified when that comes up.
Let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor today, the Nebraska Grazing Lands Coalition. Do you need help developing a grazing plan that can deal with drought and limited forage supply, as well as help you strategically design water, fencing, and financial systems that tie it all together? Well, the Nebraska Grazing Lands Coalition will be hosting a 3-day field-based grazing school July 28th through the 30th at the McGinn Ranch near Anselmo, Nebraska. The school is designed for ranchers who want to sharpen their grazing strategies, strengthen peer networks, and improve the long-term health and profitability of their grazing operations. Graduates of the school also gain free access to the Nebraska Grazing Lands Coalition's Grazing School Follow-Through program, which provides one-on-one on-ranch support to help you achieve your grazing goals. This ongoing connection with instructors and peers is designed to build local networks of like-minded ranchers who continue to work together long after the school ends. Registration is open now through July 20th. You can find out more information at nebraskagrazinglands.org. So basically on the treatment side, maybe it's more like we're going to treat acute cases, not general. Like I go some places where everybody gets a shot, everybody gets poured with, dewormers at pretty much every time the animals are confined into a pen. They're all gonna get poured or whatever. So, I mean, that's obviously probably on the extreme other end, but like there are going to be cases where, hey, this animal actually doesn't fit this system. She needs treated, but we're not going to let her suffer and die just because we're wanting to maintain purity. We're going to treat her, maybe quarantine her. Maybe she isn't in the program, but that doesn't disqualify us as a ranch from having, participating at Astoria, something kind of like that.
I would agree with that. Yes.
Yeah.
I think transparency is very important as well. So, yeah, this is a heifer that's part of a good grass herd, same genetics. We have treated this one with an antibiotic once. And being transparent about that is the important thing. But leave it to the buyer to decide. Yeah, it's from a good herd.
Yeah, I like
buyer,
that.
Do your own, use your own judgment.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. So, yeah, I'm operating on some assumptions. Like I said, I listened to that other podcast. At that point, you said cows, sheep, chickens, and pigs. Is that right?
It's for any animal. I think we are focused on cows and pigs primarily, largely because those are the two animals that I've heard the most pain from people in the industry, that they're the hardest to find good pasture-based versions of. But there's turkeys and sheep and goats and you name it is available as well if people need that and there's a demand for it, which there is to varying degrees across the different species from what I've seen.
And one of the things that you mentioned kind of related to that earlier was that, we want these cows that can thrive on grass, pretty much exclusively, depending on the state of your soil health and your environment and some of those other things. Now, is that standard different in your mind, in your opinion, in your understanding, in your experience, whatever you want to say, for pigs and chickens? I know sheep are similar, at least in my experience, they are. We've been running our own sheep herd for 7 years now, and running them pretty much on grass, moving them regularly, and basically not having to worm them right now is probably our biggest struggle with parasite load, and it's flies that we've had, and that's more because of some of the animals we bought than it is the actual, I think they came with the flies, and now they're struggling a little bit, but
flies included.
Right.
Yes.
So, but is there a different standard for the pigs and the chickens? I know even some of these guys that are doing the chicken tractors, Joel Salatin, for example, there's some grain in that ration, I'm sure, that those guys are getting. So talk to me a little bit about that in your understanding.
Absolutely. The difference between ruminants and, we'll say, omnivores, or whatever
Right.
word you want to use for the chickens and the pigs, of course, is massive. Now, there appears to be, from the folks that I've talked to, specifically in the pig and, we'll say, laying hens, the broiler world seems to be okay with the industrial Cornish cross, and so I won't talk too much about that. But on the pig and laying hen side, yes, they, from what I understand, they need to have some kind of feed. Unless you have an enormous amount of land, there's no way they could possibly forage for enough energy and life in order to sustain them. So the rules in that case are not necessarily around whether they can exist only on pasture. That rule is really for ruminants specifically. Now, for pigs and chickens, there are other genetic and epigenetic factors that folks use that make certain laying hens or pigs more adapted to do really well on pasture. But from this is my opinion, and I could be wrong, but it seems like the difference between the industrial and the pasture base isn't quite so stark in the omnivores versus the ruminants. At least that's kind of how the feeling I'm getting from people. But that being said, there is a difference, and people still highly prefer to get those pasture genetics, even on the omnivore side, and require them, I'll say.
Did you have a mentor on the pig and sheep side, or the pig and chicken side, like you had with Steve and Will? And maybe Will is the mentor on the other side too, but for the livestock, for the sheep and the cows?
Physical living mentors would be Will and Steve.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Will has raised pigs for a long time.
Right.
He's as good as anyone with that. But I've also learned a lot from books and podcasts. I mean, even though they're not talking to you, someone talking on a podcast can be talking to you in a way.
Yep. Yeah. That's kind of, I'm banking on that, right? That the Working Cows podcast is my learning journey that I've recorded and let other people listen to, basically, and by the grace of God, other people have found value in it and learned from it as well. But I ask questions because I want to know the answer, not because I know the answer and I want you to say what I want you to say. I want to know the answer and I don't know it, and I'm asking you to help me learn. So yeah, that's kind of been my approach for sure.
Well, it's good to be humble. It's important for me to be humble too, and to be transparent that I didn't come to this through a lens of farming, but through a lens of health. But I've learned from so many amazing teachers that have the real experience here.
Well, and that's helpful, honestly. Like, sometimes the fact that you didn't have that paradigm of this is the way we've always done it makes it easier for you to say, what is the objective truth of the situation, and how do we forge a path forward that's best for everyone, right? I mean, that's kind of one of the helpful things. There's a lot of challenges coming to it as a blank slate.
That's why people bring in consultants to get an outside opinion. Now, I don't want to think of myself as a consultant. I want to integrate myself into the movement, but it's still true, though, to bring someone in with a fresh perspective on whatever it is you're working on. They don't have any preconceived notions. They don't have any emotional attachments. We can't change this. This is how it's always been done. Someone from the outside doesn't have any of that, and I think they're more equipped to look at it objectively.
Well, everybody eats, right? So,
Same.
Me
too.
Right. So everybody eats. So you're all impacted by the food you eat, whether you understand it or not. And I think even when we start to talk about, micronutrients and macronutrients and all these things, and you're impacted by what your food ate, impacted by the things that what you're eating ate, and so it becomes a really clear connection and important point to get right.
I would harp on it even more and say, not only does it matter for your own health, what you ate and what the animals you eat are eating. I believe it is of societal importance
Mm-hmm.
what people eat and what those animals ate. And a big problem, I believe, that we're seeing in the illness of our nation is due to the illness of the physical health from the animals and the environment that is being tarnished and not truly honoring God,
Mm-hmm.
and thus the output of the foundation of the food system not honoring God is that our society does not either.
Mm-hmm.
And making that change kind of upstream is how we can flow downstream to a more healthy, orderly, divine society.
Mm-hmm. Hearty amen to all that for sure. So kind of circling back around to the platform itself, you talked about auctions and kind of mentioned eBay as kind of a model. Talk to me just a little bit about the auction idea. I mean, some of this is true price discovery, right? Because just because a cow is worth a certain amount at the sale barn right now doesn't mean that this cow that can survive on grass and then raise another calf that can survive on grass and go be a direct marketed grass finished beef animal is worth the same thing as that cow in the sale barn. So, is that part of the motivation for an auction base? Is that true price discovery?
Absolutely. So, one thing I have seen that pains me, and it pains a lot of people in this space as well, is they have some animals that they need to sell, and they do everything right. They have their animals out on pasture, they have the right genetics and epigenetics, and these animals are in a truly symbiotic relationship with their natural environment, and they're thriving because of that. And they don't have a way to sell these animals to someone who also appreciates that way of managing animals, and they end up selling them into an auction barn, as we hear many times, and those animals end up going into an industrial feedlot type system where their exceptional aptitude to be well adapted to their environment is not a factor at all. It matters to some extent, but not nearly as much as it could. And so, all that to say, the right buyer does appreciate those factors. And what I've heard from a handful of folks who have been able to build a brand and a following of people who appreciate their practices through auctions, the price discovery that results from them allows them to sell those good animals for sometimes a significant premium over the commodity price, because animals aren't really a commodity. I mean, gold and silver and oil, those are more like commodities, but a living being is not really a commodity. And so the intention for Astoria is to make a market around this, what I believe is truly a separate market. I believe the grass genetics and pasture raised animals are a whole other market that is not being served effectively, and these people are unfortunately being required to partake in a marketplace that doesn't serve them hardly at all. I mean, the auction barns will you'll find a reduced price for not vaccinating, not having a black hide, all these things that don't
Arbitrary.
serve. They're arbitrary, and they are and they're not helpful.
Right.
They're harmful to the practices these people follow, but this is their only option. Until now, there is a marketplace for people who have a whole different, not just set of animals, but set of values and set of practices. And I believe that a marketplace built around that group of people and animals is going to lead to more fair or just prices, because the market has some liquidity in it. People are able to figure out, this is how much this type of animal goes for in this part of the world, this time of year, this year, and so on and so on, in a way that you could not discover until now.
Yeah. That's great. And one of the things I've noticed, my family and I try to keep a milk cow around. And, one of the things I've noticed is that milk cow market is more stable than the beef cattle market. And like I'm talking home milk cows, um, if you're just buying from somebody who's got a bred Jersey heifer for sale, she's always going to be, whatever that for, or maybe if she's got a calf at side or whatever, that's what she's going to be. Whereas, you might buy a bred beef heifer for $1,500 at the bottom of the market. Now we're up over 4,000 or whatever we're at now, at the top of the market. And so I think that those smaller niche markets are more stable. They don't go through these massive swings, but ultimately probably more valuable day in and day out, and even will creep up with a higher market, but never really bottom out with the lower market is kind of what I've seen over the years. And I think it's probably similar in the grass-based genetics market as well.
I think it could be hard to know that because it's easy to know in the commodity market because
Right.
the data is everywhere.
Yep.
That's another point. I'd like there to be better data on the going rate and what's a fair price and what makes sense for people
Yep.
in this space. So hoping that we can help there too and make more of this data available as the auction barns are for the commodity industry.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of goes to the next question I had written down is about scale. How can this scale? What scale is it capable of? Maybe is the question that I'm actually trying to ask.
The system has been set up to be able to scale to essentially as many regenerative animals as there are in the United States. The intention is to keep it in the United States only, because the mission is to heal our nation, and it's a lot more complicated once you start doing multinational. But the scale, in my mind, is every pasture-based or grass genetics animal in the United States has a market where people who believe in what you believe are all working together to do business.
Yeah, and tell me about kind of some of the response so far. What have you seen? Kind of the traffic and transactions, and how has it been going?
So the responses that I've been getting are incredibly positive in general. I would say overwhelmingly, not just in general, overwhelmingly very positive. A lot of people have this problem that is being solved by this platform. A lot of people don't have it, and they say they're in, thankfully they're in a good position. They don't have this problem. Oftentimes they have a closed herd. They don't do much buying or selling of live animals. Maybe they just go into a meat market or dairy. But for everyone else, the reaction has been, yes, I believe this is an awesome idea, and I do believe that it's needed. And then also the follow-up is, how can I help? Which has been phenomenal. I guess because people tend to be in this space, not necessarily just as a way to make money. A lot of people that I've talked to are in this space out of a passion and a mission, and they have underlying reasons, purposeful, deep reasons why they're doing this the way they're doing it. They truly believe in the mission, and they know that this infrastructure is helping the mission of healing and honoring God and all the things that people agree with in this space, and they want to help. They want to see it succeed. In terms of, where are we on scale and on volume? I would say soft launched 2 months ago, and I've been calling people and meeting people every day since then. And last month we started listing auctions, and finally, thank God, yesterday we had the first sale close, and we were able to get a really good grass genetics bull to a fellow in Wisconsin, and he loves it, and I think it's really going to help his herd. So happy to say that animals are moving and scaling is happening. We're scaling up. Auctions are being listed pretty regularly, and the network is growing every day.
Cool. That's awesome. Great to hear. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's a good day.
that's a culmination. Probably some celebration was in order, right, for that?
Definitely. And it can be hard, candidly, to work on something for 5 months and, it's like, I heard a sermon a couple weeks ago that you have to build the roots before you can harvest the fruit,
Mm.
and that changed my perspective in a way, and I started to appreciate more that, okay, no, I'm not picking fruit now, but what I am doing is building roots in a way I think that's helping every single person that enters this network is going to continue to benefit long term from the roots of this network that are being built before the fruit can come. And we just had a piece of fruit come. We just helped someone
Mm.
get a bowl that's really going to help their herd. So, boom, we already have a piece of fruit and the roots keep growing.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exciting. Do you see this as a platform that is going to serve mostly for buying and selling breeding stock? Or do you see it as one that's breeding stock and people who are looking to buy animals that they can take and grass finish this year?
It's absolutely both. A more interesting question might be, or a deeper question maybe, is what's the split? What seems to be the most needed?
Hmm.
And at this point, I'm still not sure because maybe I've seen more interest on the breeding stock side, but there's still a lot of interest on I need to I need to get some cattle. I need 20 head of steers and I need to finish them because I have the demand this year. So I'm seeing both use cases quite a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, I wondered. That's good. So, what's the how does it work from a economics perspective? Are you guys taking a commission for the marketplace? Is there a membership fee for people wanting to sell? Some combination of the two?
It is for buyers entirely free to use. You can log on, you can browse auctions, you can make an account, you can bid on auctions, you can buy animals. All of that's for free. On the seller side, you can apply to be a seller, you can become a seller, you can list your auctions. All of that's free. There's no listing fees, anything of that nature. Only if you get the price that you're looking for, which generally I would say tends to be a small premium over the commodity rate. If you get that rate and you're selling to someone who appreciates what you're doing, then we would take a 3% commission on that sale, and that's the only fee.
And then, are you guys doing the payment processing too, or is there how's that being handled?
Short answer, no. Now, originally, the answer was yes. I came to the understanding from a lot of feedback from people that being able to the buyer and seller work together to pay how they want to pay, be able to pay cash, be able to just have some flexibility on that, and maybe even be able to haggle last minute if something came up for whatever reason. People wanted that ability. And so to preserve the freedom of people to do business with each other, it is essentially up to the buyer and seller to handle payments. It's also the responsibility of the buyer and seller to handle any regulatory compliance that there may or may not be. Maybe they're crossing state lines, maybe there's some rules they need to know about, and it's also their responsibility together to handle transportation at this stage. Now, on the listing, you can say as a seller, the buyer has to come pick up, or you can say, "Oh yeah, maybe I can be flexible for a fee," or something of that nature, but ultimately, the core aspect of once the buyer and seller both know, yes, we definitely want to do business, essentially everything after that is on them to work out together.
Sure. Huh. Very good. What's the future, or have you been surprised by or thought of new ways to implement this technology uh, since the launch?
Hmm. So the future, I'll answer that maybe in two different ways. The future of the technology platform is ever evolving based on the feedback of people, and we're making changes almost every day. I made a handful of changes this morning based on the first auction truly closing and the animals actually moving. We never got that far until this point. I had to make a handful of changes to improve a few things. But as we keep rolling through this, we're taking feedback from people. And I would say, more importantly, very interested in feedback from people. How can this tool truly help your business? And what can we do? Because my perspective on software, we can do anything. Any problem that we have can be solved with software, I guess, with some caveats. But I'll just say a very grand statement and leave it there. But yeah, we could do anything with our platform. So the second part, though, of the future, maybe even more interesting and exciting, is my own personal journey that I haven't even touched on yet, which is I'll go back to last summer when, up until last summer, let's say I was born and raised and lived my whole life in Ohio. And along this journey of being convicted that I have to help this movement any way I can, my wife and I sold our house in Ohio and we bought a Sprinter van, and we spent probably 6 months and many tireless evenings converting this into a camper that we can live in, which I'm sitting in actually right now. I have Starlink internet and we're out in a national park in Arizona as part of a national tour of going to farmers markets and visiting farms to meet these folks and establish connections and learn about their business and the problems that they have and the needs that they have. And so, we started on the east side of the country in January of this year, full time, living in this van, and we've made it down to Florida and then through Texas all the way over to Arizona now, and intend to continue up through the Pacific Northwest and then back east through the plains. And that's the immediate plan now, meeting folks and getting hands-on experience in this industry, which I believe is super valuable. And maybe selfishly, I just love meeting the people because they're so wholesome. There's just so much positivity and love in this community, and I love being a part of it. So I want to meet as many people as I can in it. I do have a goal. This isn't etched in stone yet, but I guess I'm saying it, so maybe it will be etched in stone. But next year, I want to do a more structured tour, almost like a band would do a tour. And I'd like to schedule this all out, go to all these different farms and do some interviews on camera and things of that nature, because people have such good stories to talk about. And as that idea is solidifying, I've also been recording phone calls that I've been having with people, and with their permission, I've been cutting out little bits that are just incredible. People have so much wisdom to talk through in this space, and such good stories and things to say that I can't help myself but want to quote them and let their voice be heard by more people. So that's another part of the future, is really I guess that's what you're doing in a way, you as well, with this podcast, is giving people a platform to have their voices be heard. I love that. And this snipping out calls is almost like a miniature cousin or something of a podcast. Because I'll sit down and talk with someone for an hour and then think, that was basically a podcast. We didn't publish it, but we could publish 30 seconds of it. And
I'm always thinking, well, you should start a podcast, and it would definitely fit, that would be good. And I think that the more niche down you are, the more traction you'll get with the podcast, where you're focused on, hey, this is the regenerative or the grass-based genetics, we're focused on that market. We're focused on people who are looking for grass-based genetics, and talk to people raising them, talking to people looking for them. I think it would be a hit with those people, with your target market. So I think it would work, but not that you need one more thing to do.
Maybe not this year. I already feel like I'm doing podcasts with all the calls that I have. So it wouldn't even be that much different.
Right. Well, and if you've got them recorded and got permission to share them, you can go back and share those conversations, so, but, again, and I think, like, Grant Grant Vassberg with Boss Sires, kind of a related market really to what you're doing. Somebody took off and started a podcast with their clients, and so I think that's always something I have to remind myself of is I don't have to do this, but somebody should.
Definitely.
So
Definitely. I'm glad that you are doing this.
yeah, so very good. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I think I've covered everything that was kind of on the front of my mind to ask you about. I do have a question for some bonus content if you got about 10 more minutes, but
I got time.
we'll sign off for now and then capture that bonus content. So, Cory, thanks for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Clay. This has been great.
Very good stuff there with Cory. Really appreciate his heart and the work that he has done and the fruit that he is starting to realize from this endeavor. So encourage you to head on over to AstoriaLivestock.com and check that out for yourself. Looks like a great service. So coming up next on the Working Cows podcast, we will be talking with Mary Jo Ehrman. Long time since we've had her on. Looking forward to that. But also, she is bringing along a friend, Michelle Prather, and we're going to talk to the two of them about how we go about protecting the assets on a ranch from the threat of long-term care. So, whatever it is, accident that results in somebody needing to be in long-term assisted living or care, dementia, all these other things that we think about, obvious, maybe the ones that jump to the front of your mind, but maybe you don't think about the accidents or something else like that. So we're going to talk to them about the options and then how infinite banking and, Michelle's strategies for long-term care can kind of help really complete that cycle and help protect people and build generational wealth. So look forward to that coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows Podcast.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.